Alright, so in this project we're basically going to step it up a notch in terms of advanced PHP. Basically this is a relatively simple forum application, written in PHP of course, and basically a user can come to the site and create an account. Alright, so we're going to have full registration functionality. Alright, they can enter all their details, a username, a password, and they can upload their own avatar and also a little about me blurb. Okay, so they can register. We're not going to get into email confirmations or anything like that. That would just take way too long. So once they create an account, they can then log in. So let me just give you an example. Okay, so they can log in, you get a little message, log out button appears, and now we can create a topic. But first let's take a look at the actual topics. Now when I say topic or post, I'm meaning the same thing. Alright, so basically a topic and a post are the same thing. Alright, so here's an example. We have the title up at the top, and this is the initial post or topic. And then underneath people can reply to it. Right, so there's a little reply form, and this only shows if the user is logged in. Alright, and then we have on the side a user avatar, the number of posts that they have on the site, and posts refers to topics and replies. Alright, and then there's a link where you can actually view the topics that that particular user has posted. Alright, you can see we have the number of replies here. We even customize it so that the title has the user's name in it. And you can also narrow topics down by category. So if I click over here in development, it's going to give us all the posts in the development category. Design, I don't have any posts in there yet, but if I did, they would all show right here. Alright, so they could create a topic. So basically a topic has a title, a body, category, and that's pretty much it. In the database we're also going to have a create date for when the topic was created. It will also include the user's ID, the category ID, things like that as well. Alright, so our database will basically have 4 tables, which are topics, replies, users, and topics, replies, users, and categories. Alright, so that's going to be the structure of our database. And we also have some statistics down here which gives us the total number of users, topics, and categories. But the main thing about this project is we're really going to shift to an object-oriented style of programming. In the past couple projects we used a little bit. We used a database class in the last one, but now we're going to have a database wrapper class. We're going to have a topics class, a user class, and I think that maybe one more. So we're really going to get into object-oriented programming, and we're also going to get into templates. That's it, template class. We're going to have a template class that will allow us to assign templates to pages on the fly. Alright, so it's going to be much better organization than our last few projects. The last few projects I just wanted to kind of get the basics, get you started on the basics, and now we'll get more advanced. Alright, so we can get started, and like all of my projects I like to start with the user interface, and this is actually a customized Bootstrap template. So we're actually going to build this. We'll go grab Bootstrap and make actually quite a few adjustments, especially with the colors and stuff like that. So let's begin with creating our project folder. Okay, so I'm in my htdocs folder, my XAMPP or XAMPP server, and we have our folder called Talking Space, which I'm going to rename to Talking Space Done, and then we'll create our folder. And talking space is just something that I just thought of real quick. The name isn't that important. Of course, you can change it if you want. Alright, so let's create our structure. We're going to have a much bigger structure than the past few projects. Alright, so let's start with our folders. Alright, so we're going to have a config folder, which is nothing new. And we can actually create the file. We're just going to have one file in here called config.php. That'll hold our database parameters and things like that. The next folder is going to be our core folder, and that's also going to have one file. And this is going to be our initializer. So I'm going to call this ini.php. Alright, and this is where we're going to store our autoloader. This is where we'll include files that we need to include. We'll start our session in this file so that we can have sessions on every page, things like that. Alright, so we need our libraries, of course. And basically these are going to be classes. So let's actually create those. Alright, so first we're going to have a database class. Oh, and I should have mentioned this earlier. We're going to be using PDO. Okay, so PDO stands for PHP Data Objects, and it's a really good alternative to using the MySQLi API. And we're going to be using something called prepared statements, where our queries are going to be, the values are basically going to be set. So it prevents us from SQL injection, things like that. And I would suggest that you read more about PDO. Let's see, php.net. Alright, so I'd suggest looking through here. It gives you basically all of the methods in the API. Transactions. Alright, so we can use transactions to store objects in the database. And let's see, just want to find kind of an example. Doesn't look like there's too many good examples here. Let's search PDO simple examples. And with the PDO, with our database class, I'm not going to type it all out by hand because it's much too big. So I'll basically paste it in, and we'll just go over the methods inside of the class. Let's see. Alright, so basically we're going to have our credentials like we did in our MySQLi projects, and then we're going to create a new PDO instance, and we're going to pass in our credentials, and we'll use a try and catch block to connect. So basically we'll try to connect, and if something goes wrong, we can actually, in the catch block, we can specify the message that but basically whatever happens. Let's see. I want to give you an example of prepared statements. Alright, so here's a good example. So we're going to create a query. Alright, we'll put it in a variable. I usually call it query, not SQL, but whatever. So we're going to select whatever certain columns from a table, and then I'm going to say where, in this example, calories is less than calories. Now you can see this this colon here. This is where prepared statements come in. We don't put the parameters directly into the query like we've been doing. We put this basically a placeholder, and then we have to prepare the statement. Alright, we're not going to do this by hand. It's going to be part of our PDO class, but just to give you an idea of how it works. So we'll prepare the statement and then we'll execute the statement. Alright, and basically here is where you define the values. Okay, so 150 for the calories placer, red for this color placer. Alright, so you can see that it prevents SQL injections because a user can't enter the values directly into the query. It's prepared. Alright, and then finally we can call this fetch all, which will just basically get whatever our query is asking for. Alright, and we use a statement handler when doing executions. STH is what's usually used, but you can use whatever you want. Let's see. This is an example with question mark parameters. Basically, you use the question mark instead of the placer up here. I prefer this example one. So that's basically it. Like I said, we're not going to type out the PDO class by hand. I'm going to paste it in and we can just go over the methods. Alright, so I think I rambled on a little too long about that. I'm sorry. So let's go ahead and continue creating our folder structure. Actually, we don't need a folder, we need a file. Okay, so next we're going to have our template class. And it's going to be fairly small. Basically, it's just we're going to easily include our files. Okay, we're also going to have includes folder with our header and footer that we can insert on every page, so we don't have to keep typing that stuff out. All right, let's see. We want to have a topic class. All right, and the topic class, the user class. Basically, we're going to use our database class as kind of a wrapper because we want to do database functions inside of these classes. Alright, so next we'll have our user class. And the last class I want to have is a validator class. Basically, that's just going to be so we can validate input. Okay, so for instance, when we have the registration form, we want to make sure that we have required fields like name, username, password. We don't want the user to be able to submit empty forms. We want to make sure that the two password fields match. We want to check the email, things like that. And if you're really familiar with object-oriented programming and you've used validation classes, then you're going to find that this is an extremely simple class. All right, I'm not going to get advanced. Basically, just going to check those three things that I just said. The next folder we need is helpers. Okay, now helpers are just that. They're helper functions. They're not going to be classes or anything like that. They're just standalone functions that can aid in different things. Alright, so we're going to have three of these helpers. Alright, so the first one's going to be a DB helper. Basically, database operations that we want to just create, that we want to run on the fly, especially in templates. If you have a for each loop and you want to say change an ID to a name, then you would use the DB helper. Alright, so the next one is going to be format helper. Alright, and that is going to have things like date format, so we can have a nice looking date, things like that. And then the final helper is going to be our system helper. And this we'll use for things like redirects. I'm going to use this to check and see if a user's logged in, so we can use that easily inside of the templates, things like that. Alright, so next we're just going to have our images folder, and this will hold site images. It'll also hold things like the user avatars. And actually inside images I want to create a folder called avatars. Alright, so next the final folder we need is templates. Alright, and basically you can also think of this as a views folder with different views. Alright, so we'll have our CSS folder. We're going to have an includes folder. Alright, and includes is going to have a header file, as well as a footer file. Alright, so that's all we need there. Now for the templates, or the views, we're going to have a front page view, okay, which will just basically be the posts that show on the home page. Topics for the list of topics page. We want to have topic singular for when we visit a page that just has the topic. Let's see, register, which will have our registration form, and create, which will have our create topic form. Okay, so those are our templates, and that's it for the folders. Now we get to include just the core files themselves, the files that we interact with. Alright, so of course we need an index.php. And we need a create.php. And these can, if you're familiar with model view controller frameworks, these are going to work kind of like controllers. Alright, so basically we're going to pass it off to our library, which is going to kind of act like a model where we deal with our database, things like that. And we're also going to load our templates from these files as well, or views. Okay, we want topic, we want topics, login, and login and log out are basically just going to be functionality files. They're not going to have any kind of template or anything. And register. Alright, and I think that's it. Yeah, that should be it for our application. You can see that the structure is a lot bigger than past projects, but I just wanted to really hit on object-oriented programming. So next we will create the user interface.